Hi guys! First of all, I just wanted to let you guys know how proud I am of the work you guys are doing in class. The posters are looking great. You guys are giving me the feedback I'm looking for. You're being specific. You're finding that evidence, and I really appreciate it. And I hope you guys are getting as much from it as I am. But today we're going to be looking at figurative imagery and how it ties into literature as a whole and literature in Unwind. Figurative imagery basically deals with the style, rhetoric, and semantics of language. So it deals with the words on the page. Most often it's used to highlight specific imagery or emphasize important points that the author really wants the reader to notice, and it's really common in almost every text you're going to come across. I'm going to outline a few of the devices that are most common that you can go ahead and use to look for in Unwind for your posters and also use in your future writing. Especially in the argumentative paper that I mentioned in the last video that you'll be working on next. Okay, so let's get into it. I'll start with figures of speech. Please go ahead and take notes so that you can reference them in the future and that you don't forget about them while you're writing. Okay, examples of figurative speech include similes, metaphors, personification, etc. So a simile, which you should be familiar with by now, is a comparison using like or as. So it's saying something like, instead of saying her eyes are green, you could say her eyes are as green as the grass on a summer's day. And it just adds a little bit more imagery and makes it a little more just nice to listen to. Then there's metaphor, which is a comparison that's a little more implicit. It doesn't use like or as, it just sort of references something else to convey an analogy. So you could say something like, the clouds blanketed the sky over the city. So you're comparing the clouds to a blanket, but you're not saying the clouds are like a blanket over the city. It's a little more sophisticated, and if you can work it in nicely, it'll add a lot to your paper. There's also personification, which is giving animation to an inanimate object, or making something seem more human. So you could say, the flowers bowed to the light of the sun. Obviously, flowers don't bow, but you get the imagery of the flower bending over and leaning to the light, and it can be done for a lot of things. Honestly, you could say the washing machine gargled as the clothes started to be washed. You know, like, it's just like the word choice you use make it so much more descriptive when you add a little bit of personification like that. There's also figurative language that deals specifically with sound, like onomatopoeia, for example. And onomatopoeia is basically a word as a sound. So these are words like pop, bam, wow. And they're words that have, like, the word itself is the sound, so it adds a little thing, but you don't want to overuse it in your writing because then it seems a little cheesy and almost like a comic book. As far as sound goes, there's also alliteration, which is the repetition of sounds at the beginning of a word. So this is where you get your tongue twisters, like Sally sells seashells by the seashore. I can't even say it. But things like that, where you have the beginning S sound in many of the words. So Sally, sells, shells is not really so much, you know, that kind of thing. And it just, like, it draws a reader's attention to that sentence because it has that sort of sound to it. So it can really be used to highlight an important place or an important point that you're trying to make. And then there are other rhetorical devices that are used for figurative language as well, like repetition and parallelism. And that's pretty self-explanatory. With repetition, you're just repeating certain phrases, certain words, either in a row or throughout a paper, just to add emphasis. This is really prevalent in poems, where you'll get like a stanza and then you'll have a line, and a stanza and a line, and it keeps going back to that because it's the theme that they want you to get to. That's really popular with repetition, excuse me. With parallelism, you're looking more at the way the sentences are structured. So while they say different things, the structure of the sentence remains the same. Then there's also anaphora, which is the repeating words at the start of clauses. So let's say you are an activist and you are trying to get people to rally for a cause. So you can say, this is why this is a problem. This is why we need reform. This is why we need to take action. That repetition of this is why gets their attention and makes them realize how important it really is. Like, hey, listen up. And it might be good also for your argumentative paper if you're trying to make a point and convince people to believe in your side as well. Then there's hyperbole, which you probably see a lot in everyday life, which is an over-exaggeration. And what I always think of is, I'm so hungry I could eat a cow. But just as far as the classroom, I hear people all the time like, I will literally die if I have to do that. Like, no, you won't literally die. You will just do it and be a little bit sad while you do it. Like, you'll be okay. You know, people tend to over-exaggerate things just to make a point, but you can use it tastefully in an assignment, or if you're adding dialogue to make a character seem more realistic and having them say stuff like that. So use it as you may. Lastly, I also want to talk about allusion. An allusion is a reference to something else, and usually it tends to be a reference to the Bible. So if you have a Christ-like figure, that will be an allusion to the Bible. If you have characters talking about the forbidden fruit or about temptation or sin, if there's a serpent that leads to evil, that tends to be in the Bible. And like that will come with more practice as you read. If you're not familiar with the Bible, we'll probably read Genesis at some point during the class, just because there is so much literature that refers to it, and it's important just to like understand what those allusions are talking about. But Unwind actually does have a significant amount of allusions to the Bible, and that could be something that you write about in the section of the poster. So now that you guys have that, and hopefully you took notes, feel free to rewind and rewatch. I know I went through it kind of quickly, but I just want to give you guys an overview. We'll talk about it a little bit more in class. I want you to go back into your copies of Unwind and look for examples of figurative language. You can use any of those devices, highlight them, and get ready to bring them to class tomorrow. I encourage you to find as many as you want, as many as you can. Obviously, there's going to be a lot. I need you to come with at least three good ones too. I don't want like silly sentences that are loosely based. Like find 3 good examples of figurative language. It shouldn't take too hard because this is a book that is chock full of them. Okay, we'll be filling out the eyes of the poster in class, which deal with what you see in the figurative imagery that gets you there. And I look forward to seeing what comes next. Okay, see you then.